The line that kept coming up for me pretty clearly is the biblical line, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." I keep trying to understand this process of awakening. And why it seems delivered to some and not to others. And what it keeps coming down to for me is who wants it? Pretty much that's the whole answer. Who wants it? And it's kind of, how much do you want it? The word sincerity and earnestness rise up a lot. I know this much. Kind of wanting something only kind of gets you it. If you sort of want something a little bit, maybe you'll sort of get some. But there seems to be something really fundamental in manifested states where if you really want something and you really work for something and you really drive towards something, there's a good chance you'll get it. What you do with it, whether it proves to be something worth getting, is often a question. Does it always deliver? I'm not so certain. But let's say you really, really want something. When I was a kid, I'll tell you what I wanted more than anything in the world was a tape recorder, a Voice of Music tape recorder. Not a wire recorder like my dad used to have, but a real reel-to-reel tape recorder. And I didn't have any money. I was like 14, I guess, 13. Probably could have worked. But I did what any self-respecting kid does in those years. I began in August to prepare my parents for what I wanted for Christmas. And I didn't let them forget it. Any day up until Christmas morning. I just said over and over, Voice of Music, reel-to-reel videotape recorder, and I gave them a list of all the things I would do with that recorder. And I didn't let up. I was really so obnoxious, it was just awful. But they could not deliver that tape recorder. And Christmas morning, I was the happiest kid ever because there it was. And it was everything I had hoped. I had the best time in the world with it, and I passed it on to my brother, who, interestingly enough, opened a recording studio in Detroit, starting with my little tape recorder. So it had a huge, huge impact on the family, and it was really, really wonderful. The spiritual unfolding in my life is its own story, and it really is a story. And I'll give you a few of the highlights, but I think they're meaningful. You all know about the LSD trip in the 1960s that really blew my head apart and said everything I believed about life wasn't what I imagined. Life was so other that I began immediately to try to piece together what is this world that we're living in. I was looking for answers everywhere I could, and the answers that seemed to come were from the mystical traditions of all the different religions. They all talked about this ineffable knowing, this awareness, this enlightenment, this awakening, this new truth that would be revealed, this rebirth, if you will. And I really, really, at that point, had nothing else in my life that mattered as much. I'd always wanted a big career. That was always a big dream of mine. But I was on the entry point into that career. It wasn't the entry point I wanted. I was an assistant film editor at NBC News at Rockefeller Center. And as much as my parents thought I had arrived and this was the best thing that could ever happen to someone, I knew it wasn't the best thing that could happen to someone. And they kept, the people there liked me, and they kept trying to give me bigger and bigger positions, and I kept trying to proselytize for this drug that would change consciousness of the world, until some kid in Brooklyn killed his aunt and blamed it on LSD, and then everybody started to think, oh my God, this is a demon drug and it's terrible. And I kept saying it was sacramental, but nobody would listen to me. And finally I said, I can't stay at NBC, I gotta leave. I have to go to India, I gotta go to Tibet. I have to meet Tibetans, I need to find out about the Book of the Dead. I completely believed that they had the truth, and that they saw a bigger picture than I had ever seen until the LSD. And so I quit this job at NBC, and as I've told this story 1,000 times, the entire editing department and news department at NBC took me to lunch to say goodbye. A restaurant that had a table as big as this room, and everybody sat there. Why? Because I was the only person escaping. And they knew it. I was doing the one thing they all wanted to do, which was get out of NBC News and find my way in the world. And so I left, and it was a wonderful send-off. And I trekked off to India, and I had great adventures inspired in many ways by Lawrence of Arabia, which I watched again 2 nights ago in Seattle, and which is as powerful a film about pure determination as I've ever seen, and a wonderful little Broadway musical called Man of La Mancha, where to fight the impossible, to dream the impossible dream became my mantra. I wanted to dream this impossible dream, and I was in the middle of the desert in Afghanistan, lying in a 3-walled hut with no fourth wall and no ceiling, looking up at the sky, being buffeted by winds, and something said, "You're going to have stories to tell," and it was great. And then I got to India. I was lying on a boat on the Ganges, and the boat on the Ganges, I was smoking. God, I'm selling drugs here. I was smoking not hashish, it was opium actually. And I was lying on a really hard floor, and every night the hard floor would get softer and softer, and I would have this beautiful sleep, and about 5 in the morning it would get harder and harder. But I was lying there one night, and it said to me, you have to create a masterpiece. That my liberation was based on creating a masterpiece. And I didn't know how I would know if I ever did that, or if I would ever do that, but it was pretty much marching instructions. I got to India, I got to Nepal, I lived in a Tibetan monastery. You mostly know the story. I came back to America after this journey, having found only one thing. In a record store in Japan, as I was ending my journey, I found 2 record albums. One was the Beatles had created an album while I was gone called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and on that album it had this wonderful track, Goodbye with a Little Help from My Friends. And boy, that meant a lot to me. And then I saw Jefferson Airplane, Gracie Slick, singing, Don't You Need Somebody to Love? And those are the messages that I got, friends and love. And I came back to America, and I met the love of my life, Blanche. And I was on the road to I don't know what. All I know is I didn't find the truth. I didn't find a teacher. I didn't find a spiritual life. I found Blanche. However, the day I found Blanche, this is the myth anyway, we don't know if it's the actual date, but it felt like it. That same day I went to a store that I had gone to many years before. It was called Rudy's Antiques on 7th Avenue next to the Village Vanguard. And I had these Tibetan carpets that I had carried around from India. I'd actually sent them back to America, but I had to get money for these monks I had lived with. And so I took him to Rudy's store, and he asked what I was doing in Nepal, and I said I was looking for a teacher. He said, "Did you find one?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, I can teach you everything you want to know." And I knew it was true. I absolutely knew it was true. And I began studying with Rudy. I met Blanche, I believe, that night. So astrologically, God knows it was an amazing day. And I committed to both of them in my heart. And Rudy died. My teacher was in a plane crash, and the impossible happened. And it was tragic. Bo was piloting the plane, and it was not his fault, but it was a tragic accident, and it changed everything. And I was now a museum curator at the Whitney Museum in New York, and I no longer had a teacher. And I said, I have to continue my studies. My spiritual life was more important than my career. So I went to the head of the museum, and I said, I'm leaving. He thought I was crazy, because now I really did have a job that you don't walk away from. But I said, I have to do this. And I call it, in retrospect, spiritual romanticism, because it was a romantic move that absolutely was absurd and unnecessary. But I made a statement to myself and to the powers that be that I wanted this more than that. And I left my job, and I ended up with my wife and my son in a monastery with no job, no work, no prospects. And I thought, what have I done? This is absolute insanity. I've given up everything for what? A little tiny room, one room in an ashram. And I was not happy. I really went through a big depression. But slowly I got work, and I created a foundation for the ashram. We got government money. I had an income. I actually went back to school, got a degree, master's. And then Blanche and I moved to DeKalb, Illinois, which was, I think of as my time in the desert, because, although it was really my time in the cornfields, but it was a horrible, horrible place. And the worst period of 4 years of my life. And I sat there, and in the middle of all that, I came up with script ideas for a movie called Ghost, and I wrote a whole movie called Jacob's Ladder, and a movie that I had written called Brainstorm actually opened and closed rather quickly and had tragic incidents with Natalie Wood dying. And all these things happened, but I was stuck in DeKalb, and finally I have this amazing wife who said, we're moving. She said, we're going to Los Angeles, to Hollywood. And we left. And we left with nothing. We didn't have enough money. We didn't have enough money to live for more than 2 months in LA. And all of this leaping of faith for something that I really wanted more than anything, but was terrified to get. And without my wife saying, we're going to do this, I would never have done it. And she literally went to her department head and quit. She put these little things at the AMP that you could pull off and buy our house, with a picture of our house, and we sold it. And we moved, and everything turned around. LA just welcomed us in an enormous way. It was like having a seed that found fertile ground. And we came to LA, and I had a career, which was, to me, amazing, because you don't come from Detroit with a dream and actually realize it. Very few people that I know did. And this dream was realized. But at the heart and core of this dream was the constancy of what we're doing here right now, which is sitting in a group that would be called Sangha in Buddhist terms, a group that gathers together to continue and to be present in spiritual harmony, if you will. And that became, for me, the foundation of my life in Hollywood. Because what I discovered really quickly is Hollywood is not a friendly place. And it doesn't give you very much. It gave me a career, but what was a career? A career was basically I could support my family. That's what it was. And I could support them pretty well. But that was it. I didn't walk around with any sense of real identity ultimately. It just, my sense of joy in life came from Sunday mornings sitting here with you guys, who many of you have been here from the beginning. And that has been sustaining. All of these leaps of faith, all of these giving up security, all of these moments of walking away from a support mechanism into the unknown, as far as I can tell, were recognized. They were recognized by, Rudy would call it the guys upstairs. I don't know what to call it. I think it's recognition from the self itself. But the self said, he's serious. He's serious. He wants this thing he says he wants. And I kept feeling, as much as I practiced and sat with all of you, as much as I was getting closer and closer and would have these periods of real sweetness and joy and bliss and massive connectivity, I couldn't hold on to it. I couldn't hold it. And something wasn't right, and I didn't know what wasn't right. And I kept feeling I'm doing something wrong, but then I didn't know what more to do. And then they did the thing that they do for people who finally realize that there's nothing you can do. They lift the veil, or the cellophane as someone described it, and show you that the thing you have been looking for this entire time was right there. Everything you've been pursuing, everything you have leaped for, every romantic gesture you have made for the spiritual truth of your life was always right there. And that is so classical in terms of the teaching, but it's so amazing to look out past your story, because what falls away in the veil coming up is your personal story is no longer the prism through which you look at the world. You now see the world without the prism. It's just the world. And you see it not as I and thou, it's one thing. It's one constant. It's one totality. Absolute. And you don't see any real division between you and that. It's all this one thing. And that one thing is what we are, is who we are. It's our essence, it's our being. It's what we know we are when we are 8 months old, and forget what we are when we're 2 or 3 years old. And the loss of that, in a way, is tragic on some level and essential on another, because the manifested universe requires us to have self-serving need, meaning egoistic drive. It's built on our ego. It's built on our sense that we have to do stuff for us. And it requires this enormous sense of individuation, so that we're all separate in some way from each other, and we're all in harmony and conflict, kind of in varying modes. And that conflict and that harmony builds this existing universe. And this universe is worth building. I can't tell you why it's worth building, but I'll tell you this. When I hug my granddaughter, I know it to be true. I know it to be true because of that love. I know it to be true, forgive me, I said this last week, I think, in New York, because of strawberry ice cream. It's enough. It's enough. The universe came into being so I could taste strawberry ice cream, which I don't mean to sell you. I mean, I like chocolate and everything else, but strawberry ice cream, Haagen-Dazs particularly, is so good that it makes the journey to make the universe happen worth happening. On the other hand, take away me enjoying it, and what you have is this vast dynamic of good and evil, love and hate, life and death, manifestation and unmanifested stuff in reality. All of these things are the absolute that we share and that we are. And there is a difference between knowing that and not knowing that. The difference is spiritual practice in your pre-knowing days is exactly the word practice. It is practice. Awakening is spiritual work. It is real work. Conscious, aware, alive work. You cannot believe how alive you are. You cannot believe how remarkable your living is. Your being is. Your being present is. This thing we call presence is so infused with something of such a higher order, so amazing in its genius and brilliance, so full of awe and wonder and mystery. And it is your own very nature. It is your own true nature. And if you want to know it, you have to tell it you want to know it. You have to demonstrate you want to know it, because it's worth knowing. And I think for many people, in the last moments of their life, especially people who've lived a good life, the Ten Commandments life, if you will, following the rule book, the veil is lifted at the end, and they are welcomed into truth. But that truth is revealed as having always been there. And it is possible for that veil to be lifted now. What does that mean? It just means you serve truth, you serve reality, you serve beauty in a whole other way. It means you embody it, you express it, you connect to it, you share it, you help awaken it in other people. Is it important that that be done? No. Or it would happen to everybody, and it would happen all the time. It's so rare, it's so rare. Buddha said, 2 million people may be aware, but two will hear it. 2 will know. He said it better than I did. But that's the idea. Out of the millions of people who may get the calling, 2 will actually awaken. Why? Because they want it. They really want it. If you really took the measure of your own life and what you want, how many gods have you put before the ultimate God? How many do you have? It's really interesting. If you have children, they're probably a little bit ahead. Career, I gotta have that career. You can get down to really stupid stuff. I want to win the 4-H thing at the state fair. I don't mean to make that stupid, but that really, for some people, becomes bigger than this larger dream. Finding the person you love, having a child, all of that stuff, not being sick. These are the gods we hold dear, and it's totally understandable, and that which created us planted that into its manifested sort of presentation. This is how it works. But I'm telling you, for whatever reason, we have been told that there is a kind of knowledge, a poetic knowledge, if you will, that encompasses the totality and that releases you from the drama and the dream that you're separate from it. It releases you from that. And a few people experience it, and their job, if you will, after that, is to live it, to emanate it, to be it, to walk it in the world. And it's a hard walk. It's not easy. There's nothing easy about it except the sense that the whole universe is helping you. But it doesn't change the equation. You got to do the work. You have to do it. You're there to function for it. I refer to Christ a lot because, his story is very much that story. How do you emanate that being in the world, and how does the world treat you when you live that story? Not always so easily. So you're not going to walk around and everybody's going to be throwing themselves at your feet. In fact, if that happens, it's probably you're not really living that story. It's a pretty simple life that ultimately evolves. And the teaching is, you can sit with a group of people, but it's mostly one-on-one. It's mostly how you connect to what I would describe whoever is in front of you. Because that's the real work. That which is in front of you is yours. A lesson I started preaching 20 years ago, but it was a big revelation for me. If it's in front of you, it's yours. You can walk away from it. You know, I mean, Rudy would say if you're walking somewhere and there's a piece of trash in front of you, yeah, you can walk away from it and leave it for somebody else. But it was there for you. It was there for you. You can pick it up and get rid of it. And, you know, most of us walk away from almost all the things that are put in front of us. We're always walking with these ways of trying to avoid. It's not blinders. It's really the opposite. It's like not looking at it. But it is all there really is. And so what we do in a group like this, in this gathering, is we get reminded. We get reminded that there's something amazing going on. And not only are we part of it, we are it. It's an amazing message, and you will never tire of it, ever, ever. It can come at you every second of your life, and you'll go, wow, 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 wow. It doesn't stop. It really doesn't stop. But the most amazing thing is, it comes at everybody, and they're not, I'm hungry, we should be, you know, got to get out today, we got all these things going on, all these problems, like stuff I got to deal with, my life's not working, why aren't they doing? You have this scrim of noise, which completely obliterates truth and beauty and reality. Obliterates it. So having your story fall away is like the greatest gift ever. Your story is so boring, and ultimately such a burden for you to carry around. Why do it? And if it doesn't fall away of its own nature, act in spite of it. Act your life in spite of your story. Live your life knowing that it doesn't have to be confined by or defined by all of your drama. We all have drama. We all have lives that are full of good stuff and awful stuff, you know, terrible disappointments, you know, things that should have been that weren't, that might have been but couldn't be. All of that stuff, it's full of pain. It's just full of pain. Let go of that, and what's in front of you? What's in front of you? A glass of water, because you're thirsty. You know, potato chip, strawberry ice cream. The stuff you can actually have is in front of you, and it's good. It tastes good. Friends, people you love. You know, people you could love if you just opened your heart. They're all there. They're all in front of you. That's all it takes. It's all you need. All you need is love. It's all there. And the stuff that's not satisfying, that didn't get delivered, that should have been but wasn't, it's gone. It means nothing. If you hold on to that stuff, you're going to really, really be unhappy. Now, for many people, holding on to that stuff is the very definition of their story. It's the very essence of their life. Letting go of their suffering means they let go of who they are. And you think, how could I let go of who I am? It's the best thing ever. It's the best thing ever to let go of who you are. Trust me. Because what you still are when that stuff is gone is this. You're still this. Whatever it is, you're still this. It's more wonderful than ever. It's just not limited by your crap. Because your story is mostly a limiting factor. So, all I want is to give this to you. I don't have the authority or the capacity to give it to you, exactly. But I can definitely let you know that this is possible, that this awaits you, that it's there for you. And I can sit here on some Sunday mornings, not as many as you might want or as I would want, but I can sit here and give you this message again and again. And I will ask you this question. I've asked it a lot of times. Where else are you getting this message? Where else are you going during the day where people are saying you are part of the wonder of existence? How many people say that to you at the office? How often does your family come up to you and say, you're the source of joy and love and beauty in the world? I mean, maybe you're lucky, but that's not what most people hear. You have to go somewhere to get it, and this place exists, this room exists for that purpose. So you can come and have this guaranteed whenever you need it, at least once a week. And, someone like me, who professes to be a teacher, really all I am is someone who will answer the phone or answer your email and talk about this stuff over and over and over and over, maybe ad infinitum, maybe to your own exhaustion. And some of you may be secretly wishing to look at your watch right now. And I apologize for that, but I don't apologize because I can't turn it off. It's all I do, it's all I care about, and I will continue to do this. You can take as much of it as you want when you want it. It will be available. This room will be available. Someone will be sitting here presenting this. So, thank you guys for being willing to just sit through, a class of silence or somewhat silence and a talk that really refers to something that might be worthy to hear. And we'll keep this going as best we can. I mean, I think you all know what's going on right now, but I'll quickly tell you again. Blanche and I have sold a house upstate New York. The movers are coming on the 15th of October, so it will be past tense. It's a huge, tumultuous experience and really sad on a million levels. You didn't all get to be there, but it was as close to paradise on earth as I've ever witnessed. And we were coming back here into a simpler life. And then my daughter-in-law, Evan, got pregnant and is having a little baby boy in January, and they live in Seattle and they don't have a real support system. So Blanche and I have rented a house there, and we will be moving to Seattle instead of back here. But we'll be keeping this, and as often as we can, we'll be coming back here and being there. So it'll be like what used to be New York, LA, now will be Seattle, LA, which is a 2-hour plane ride instead of a 6-hour plane ride. But we will be around, and you are all welcome to come to Seattle. I don't have a class there yet. I don't even know how to start a class there, to be honest. But I will tell you, if you have friends in Seattle who you think might be interested in this kind of thing, tell them and give them my email address, and maybe a class will start there. If not, I'll be coming back here a lot more often. On the other hand, my best classes I give to my granddaughter. The two of us just sit together, and she teaches me. I just sit there and I just sit at her feet, and I fill with this love and this energy, and I'm happy to do that. So in the end, it'll be whatever it's supposed to be. But you'll see me again. You'll see Blanche again, and I'm going to end this with one more thing. Thursday is Blanche's 70th birthday, and we are having a cake downstairs. And after we leave here, if you'll all join us in the kitchen, we'll light the candles, and we will sing Happy Birthday. I will also say that the luckiest thing that ever happened in my life, other than meeting Rudy, was meeting Blanche on the same day. And that my whole life, my whole spiritual life, is essentially a love story. And it's essentially because of Blanche. And that, every one of you who's had a relationship knows what it is. Relationships are love and work and everything else, but there's a core. There is a core of such extraordinarily a sense of good fortune that your life found a rock solidity to build itself on, to create wonderful children and now grandchildren. It's really an extraordinary thing. It's a gift from this whole process of manifestation. You know, I've had so much in my life, but it all comes from simple choices, simple, absolute choices of saying yes to love when it comes, saying yes instead of running in the other direction, instead of measuring it, is it perfect, is it this, is it that, just go, this is what I want. The day I met Blanche, I told her, I'm here for the duration. I said, if you want me, I'm yours. Because Gracie Slick made a lot of sense. Don't you need somebody to love? I said, yes. And I said to myself, and I said to God, I said, the first woman you bring into the world, I'll take her as the gift. And Blanche walked in the door, and I said, thank you. And I'm telling you, it was an arranged marriage. It's truly one of the most amazing arranged marriages you can imagine. But she had the courage to say yes to this crazy guy who said, I'm here and I'm available. So that's our story. The fact that we're both now almost 70, I'm 70, Blanche will be there in a few minutes, I'll tell you, it's an extraordinary thing. It's an extraordinary thing because you get to look back at the whole picture. It's like finally getting a script that's coming to conclusion, and you get what it's about. You finally get what it's been about. And I'll tell you what it's about. It's called love. Period. So anyway, thank you guys for coming, and see you when I'm back in October.